there are a lot bigger issues to try and work through. There's a lot bigger programs that are going on. There's some of these issues that cross the parties that I think that our legislators have a hard time understanding. Things like the AI data center debate and all of that. I think those are things that are really more grounded in what we believe as Kansans than the whole deal with trans peoples and so forth. You just go out to the Garden of Eden and you look at the progressive statements that were made there. Kansas was a progressive place. You think about the Jayhawkers at the prior to the Civil War, it was a progressive place. It has been a progressive place, and we allowed all kinds of immigration here. There are communities that still proudly have their Czech heritage displayed, their German heritage displayed. There are communities that were African American communities that were part of the Underground Railroad to move here. Kansas has traditionally been a place where we believe in each other and we see the good in each other as human beings, and we're not so set on hating the other. And so I think that's part of what, at least it's part of what I hear in terms of the folks that are like, can we just get on with the business of Kansas? We have groundwater issues. We have tremendous groundwater issues. We have industrial issues. We need to keep our aviation industry strong in Wichita because so many people rely on it. We need to continue to promote Kansas City and its growth. And when we do have big projects like the Panasonic project, I think that there are a lot of folks that would prefer more transparency so that when we see that project come in, we know what its economic impact is. We know how many people are going to be affected. We know what the jobs are. I think that's what makes people so angry about the AI data centers is that there just isn't that transparency. And there's a real desire to have transparency and to see the good in the people that are trying to work for us as opposed to trying to see the bad in other people.
Yeah, I think that I really feel if a project is over a certain size, that the area should be able to vote on it, especially like the Chief Stadium. That's my biggest issue with the Chief Stadium. I actually think, I don't know, I'm torn. I think it's cool. I don't know if it's going to be the greatest idea financially for us, but I think it'll be super cool to have a sports team. I think that it'll be cool to have something in Kansas that people travel to come to do, because no one travels to Kansas for a vacation. That it's just I've done staycations and gone to the Arboretum and stuff like we talked about. But you know what I'm saying? No one
Well,
travels from California and says, let's go on vacation in Kansas. But if they're a Chiefs fan or their Chiefs are playing their team and it's the Super Bowl, we'll have celebrities traveling to Kansas.
we do have a few events that people travel from all over the country from, like Unbound and Emporia. Who would
Oh,
have thought that the biggest it's a gravel bike event would be in Kansas? There's a couple things that happen there. We have Garmin, and they're a big participant in it. But the other thing is that for years there have been people that have been promoting riding across the Flint Hills. When I did that ride 25 years ago or 30 years ago, it was called the Flint Hills Death Ride, the Dr. Jack Kevorkian Death Ride. But over the course of time, because there was that opportunity, it was well put together. People in Kansas show you a good time. It's in Emporia, Kansas, and it does bring people from all over the country to be there. I just don't know enough about the Chiefs Stadium and the deal and everything else. I think one of the mistakes that's out there, and I never agree with Charlotte O'Hara, but I do agree with this piece that she said, the incumbent for my district is in charge of putting that whole committee together, and he wants to exclude the folks from Wyandotte County from having a say in how that whole thing is governed. And I think that that's a mistake. There's no reason not to have a say. It's much better to have all those people at the table and to voice the concern, whether or not that thing is going to pay for itself and how the money should be spent. That is very true. They should be able to voice that concern, and then we should all be able to judge what that committee comes to as a decision and go from there. I don't necessarily think I'd want people to vote on every single project. When I was in Missouri, we ran into that with the Hancock Amendment all the time, is that we had to put everything to a vote that even were minor changes in the tax code. That's changed. They even relaxed that because it was just becoming overwhelming. But so I don't know that we would want to put everything to a vote, but we certainly need to at least have some level of evaluation. We need to have that economic impact study. We need to have the environmental piece that we've at least talked about so that
yeah.
people can make a good, solid decision and they can decide. And when they come to the public hearings, as a city administrator, I've stood in front of a crowd. We had a meeting once at a community center that had 300 people sitting out there in the crowd, and they were all angry with us, and we had to respond to that. but that made us better at our job because we had to demonstrate why we'd arrived at the decision that we had. So I think that those things shouldn't be looked at as this is an inconvenience or this is a problem. This is great. People are involved. They want to know what we've done, our due diligence that we've performed so that we get to a decision. Just granting what the Kansas legislature did with Senate Bill 98 is unexcusable. Giving a 100% tax break on 20 jobs, that's well, even with the minimum investment they're talking about, that is, you're taking away sales and use tax revenue that could have been used for a whole lot of other things. And so, and on one project, you could have the same amount of sales and use tax that comes out of the system as the total amount of property tax that they've reduced in the last 4 years. It just doesn't make any sense to me that you would make that kind of a decision, have that disparate impact, and just say, hey, any AI data center can claim this. That's just not right. It needs to be part of a project evaluation. And again, the community needs a voice in it. And the way that they can use that voice is that city council member or whatever. But just granting a blanket exception is.
Yeah, and see the thing is that the research I found is that there are a lot of different kinds of ways to do AI data centers, and there are ways that use less water and less electricity, but those ways obviously cost a little more and can't be built as fast. And so I think that, yeah, like, how can you just blanketly approve something when there's so many different ways they could do an AI data center is not just one thing. There's multiple ways to do it, and some are better than others. So yeah, I think everyone right now, as far as the public, is just scared. They don't understand the technology. I don't think a lot of the people in the elected office understand all the different technology involved and the different kinds of cooling systems. And it's such a complicated thing. And it is all just moving way too fast for something that is so complicated.
And I don't think even the AI people understand where this is going to be in the long run, because the information that's out there is that they're actually losing money on the AI piece. And every day you hear about a new thing that AI has done that you don't necessarily want them to have done. This morning they're talking about scams, that it's like the deep fake scams where, the fact that AI can reproduce my voice, can reproduce me talking on this podcast. There's just so many things. And where does this money that's paying for the AI come from? Is it all just gambling money? What exactly are we doing here? Yeah, AI is an interesting piece, and eventually they get us all hooked, and then we're going to end up paying for credits to use it, I think, in the long run. And okay, great. But
I
do we
think
have
that,
to fund it with sales and use tax exemptions?
yeah, I just think that from what I can understand, we already have more than enough AI data centers in the United States to process the United States data.
Yeah.
We don't need more.
Yeah, and there's some historic references that you can scratch your head about. So at the beginning of the 20th century, when we were seeing all the need to produce so much oil, what did we do? We drilled a bunch of oil wells. So what do we have now? We have zombie oil wells. So these don't belong to anybody anymore. And the Kansas Corporation Commission is the one that goes in and caps them. We had the same thing happen with cell phone technology. So we needed all these cell phone towers. So what happened is that we got single site LLCs that built a whole bunch of cell phone towers. Well, now, 20 years later, 30 years later, when those things are rusting and falling down, or my big example is that it's now an unlit tower on the way into a small town airport that needs air ambulance, and we can't find anybody who's responsible for this thing. We're stuck with it. So we have to deal with it. So that rush to development is not a great thought, especially if that rush to development also includes we're not collecting sales and use tax. We're not establishing funds to take care of these things when they are no longer useful. And if we have one of these projects that doesn't build to conclusion, how exactly are we going to take care of that? Because it's not the state that's going to step in and say, hey, developer, you got to finish this project, because the way that corporate structuring works is that there's bankruptcy and there's all kinds of other things that mean nobody's responsible anymore. So it's either the town. Just look at the development of racetracks. There's that racetrack outside of Pittsburgh sat there forever, because what happens is that who's responsible for it if they don't fulfill the terms of their industrial revenue bond? It's the city. And the city's not going to run a racetrack. The city's not going to run an AI data center, or the county, whoever the industrial development agent was. They're not going to do that. And so what you end up with is you have the potential for abandoned buildings. And so even if you have a closed water system, for cooling the thing. Without electricity, you still have an issue. You have to keep those things going, you have to keep the maintenance, and you have to be prepared for what happens at the end.
Yeah. I just think that, yeah, I think it's just too much, too fast for the people of Kansas, especially like people in Wichita and Sedgwick County do not like change at all, much less quick change. And so because the way the water system works in Wichita, you could have any city in Sedgwick County that wants to put the wrong AI data center could impact the entire county's water.
Mhm.
And so it becomes a bigger issue of this one city thinks it's okay, but the whole county really should be factored into it because they're going to take our water. And so, yeah, it's just, I think that until they can come to the table with the full facts, the full information, and had the proper community events where that information is given out and things like that, we really need to just hang on for a minute
And there should be a
before we build
trade-off.
anything else.
Yeah, there should be a trade-off. If there are incentives, they should be willing to produce the information, and proceeding with most of the development under non-disclosure agreements and things like that just doesn't feel very government.
No. Yeah, the fact that there's communities, maybe not in Kansas, but in other areas of the country that it's all said and done and going to get built before they even know it's happening.
Right.
And it's all just done. Like, why is there all the secrecy if there's not a problem? It just doesn't make any sense why it needs to be so secret if everything's kosher.